Welcome to the Dylan Experience. Today is episode 37, and I have a special guest for you today. But before we get to that, make sure you like, subscribe this video, or if you're watching, or I'm sorry, listening to this on Spotify or another platform, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and follow the channel. My guest today is a Gulf War veteran, holistic nutritionista, and a medical intuitive master energy healer. She has battled such things as Gulf War illness, CPTSD, and the failures of the family court system as a military parent. She continues to share awareness on such topics while also helping others create sustainable health plans and strategies to achieve their wellness goals. My guest today is Siannon Lee. Siannon, how are you?
Great, Don. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and I appreciate the opportunity to speak and share with your audience.
Of course. So Siannon, give me a little bit of understanding. Obviously, we talked a little bit before the show, but give myself and my audience a little bit of a kind of a story about you. Like, where have you come from? You know, what kind of brought you to where and what you're doing now, and fill in the gaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I am a Gulf War vet, and so that's kind of where it started, although I didn't know that at the time. But yes, went in the military, was in the Navy from 1991 to 1998, and somewhere around 1996-ish, started just, not feeling right. Just a lot of stress. Military obviously carries a lot of stress just overall in general with it. And I think, it's different layers of stress, and also depending on your experience, what your job is, who you're around, it can be different layers of stress and sometimes different layers of trauma, right? And so everybody can kind of resonate to that. And so I was in Norfolk, and I was working, and I just didn't feel right. I was exhausted all the time, just really, really tired. And it actually got to the point where I would, like, on the weekends, I'd sleep 14 hours and just felt like I could sleep 14 more. I was so tired, and I was like, this is not right. I was only 28 years old at the time. And I thought to myself, funny enough, if I feel this way at 28, how am I going to feel at 50? Well, I turned 50 this year, so I'll tell you. But, that concerned me. I hadn't had any children at the time. And so I went to the VA, as we do, to say, like, something's not right. It hurts when people touch me. I can't sleep at night, but I can sleep all day. And I'm in a lot of pain. There's just so many different issues, like, irritable bowel syndrome. So all these things at that time, they didn't have a terminology like they have now. They were just these symptoms. So it was hard to describe to them exactly what you were feeling. And they're like, okay, well, let's just take all the tests, right? Because that's what they do. So they give you all the tests. And then they say, they called me back in, and they were like, well, there's good news. You're in excellent health. There's nothing wrong with you. So I was like, oh, great. Well, why do I feel like crap then? And they told me that it was an emotional condition. And I was like, an emotional condition. Okay, so what does that mean? They offered me Prozac or Xanax or whatever. I think it was probably Prozac at the time. And, I was like, it's not in my head, it's in my body. And so I just really didn't get what they were saying at the time, and was totally confused and just like, whatever, like, never mind, I'll figure it out. And then, since that time, I've only been to the VA, like, I can count on one hand, and for very minimal things like, a pregnancy test or, removing a mole or something like that. So anyways, and so that kind of brought me on a journey of finding self-healing from that, because I had to. It was just something that came about as a necessity, because when there was nobody else. So I ended up going to Texas. I got an informal education in Ayurveda. Ayurvedic medicine, which is Indian medicine, is 3,000 years old. And so I was working for a company that sold some of the first supplements that were out there in the greater Houston area. And I just started taking their products in copious amounts. I changed my diet. And within 90 days, I would say 90 to 95% of those symptoms were gone. So it was pretty transformational. But at the time, again, I didn't know what I didn't know. I thought I was the only person that felt that way. Like that was just me, and that was my experience. And I didn't know that to this day, over 200,000 veterans 20 years later still suffer from Gulf War illness. And so they need to know that, you know, there's holistic ways to support your health that you can start feeling better. And, you know, the VA doctors and doctors in general, you know, if you do some research, you'll find out that a majority of them do not go to school, even the 6, 8, 10 years that they go for. Many of them don't have any time when it comes to nutrition. They know nothing about nutrition. They know nothing about health. That's not what their job is. Their job is to keep you from death, or in a sense, to a certain extent, but also to, you know, mask your symptoms so that you can, you know, move along and cope in life, so to speak.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about Gulf War illness? Because it's something that before, you know, we had this conversation a little bit earlier. For you, I've never heard of it. I've never heard anything about it. Like, what is, you know, where did it, or where does it come from? Like, what is it, you know, like, what is it? What is it supposed to be? What does it do to you? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So Gulf War illness is, it was basically a condition that was, that came out from the people that were in military service during the Gulf War time period, whether it was, you know, Gulf War I, Gulf War II, you know, Operation Enduring Freedom, or Iraqi Freedom. The vaccinations that we were given, and some of those are actually still, believe it or not, given today, and have been given even past that. However, it was the combination thereof and some of the environmental toxins that the Gulf War people were exposed to that really create that condition known as Gulf War illness. And so there were things like, you know, anthrax vaccination, which for some people I've heard is given on a monthly basis, which is, I mean, just crazy. Like, I mean, we all remember the anthrax scare, right? You know, it's a laugh funny, but not funny, you know, like we got that put into our system. You don't ask what it is, you just stand in line and get your shots. And whether you go overseas or not, it doesn't matter because you're still going to get them, you know, right. Just in case. And so the combination of those vaccines and the environmental toxins and exposures that any one particular service member could be, you know, in and around their environment is what lends to that condition of Gulf War illness.
It's really interesting. I've never heard anything about it. You know, in my own tour, we were given the anthrax series. I think a lot of us got smallpox if they hadn't gotten it before. That series, and a couple others, but I hadn't heard of anything like Gulf War illness before. And I'm curious, you know, I'm curious about, you know, what was it that what were you taking in terms of, you know, you spoke about those products. Tell me a little bit about those. Like, what was it that you used to work with this and cure this? And is it cured, I guess, so, is a better question, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I would say, so there's certain elements, of course, that you can get out of the cells with the right other kinds of compounds and elements, so to speak. There's others that are very difficult to get out of the brain because of the blood-brain barrier, and then there's some that are called forever chemicals. So like fluoride supposedly is a forever chemical. It's very difficult to get out of the body. So so I would say, as I said earlier, like 90 to 95% of the symptoms were gone. My energy came back, excess weight fell off. If I had, some excess weight at the time, the stress levels and the blood sugar and all of it, and the fibromyalgia, the chronic fatigue, everything just slowly changed over that 90 days. And it was very subtle. But so what they do in Ayurveda is they take certain herbs and they synergistically blend those together to help support the body and detoxify the body. So everything boils down to diet, proper nutrition, and detoxification, getting out the stuff that is causing an interrupt pattern in your metabolic process, right? So also could be considered a metabolic syndrome, so to speak, which kind of metabolic syndrome is anything that's disrupting that those natural metabolic pathways between your digestion and your pancreas and your liver and the Krebs cycle and all of those things. So so some of those things, one was a blood detoxifier, so something that can support detoxification. A very, very good product that they use is an herb called shilajit, but for layman's terms, something really good to get on a deep cellular level of detoxification and support is basically it's humic and fulvic acid.
Okay.
And so that's a great detoxifier, of course. If you want to cross the blood-brain barrier for some of the neurotoxins that get into the brain, like fluoride, which has a brain affinity, like mercury and aluminum, which the thing about vaccinations is they're all loaded with mercury and aluminum. They're there as quote unquote carriers. Well, where does it carry it to? Right to the brain. So, and aluminum is been linked to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's because it has an affinity for that part of the brain that interrupts those signals and those patterns and nerves in the brain. So in order to cross the blood-brain barrier, you got to get a little bit different and use we use a liquid form of where's the word I'm looking for? Zeolite. So zeolite is an interesting product that comes in a powder, but also comes in a liquid. In the liquid form, they make it small enough, I don't think it's nano size, but it's pretty small, and it gets into the brain and will help detoxify the brain of unwanted toxic chemicals, like those things that we just talked about. So fluoride, and fluoride loves the pineal gland, and so it actually calcifies the pineal gland. The pineal gland is huge in in the endocrine system and telling brain hormones what to do and what not to do, when to turn on, when to turn off, melatonin and serotonin, that happy feel good, and those kind of things. So so those are just some of the products. And another great product is sodium bentonite clay is a really good product to I'm sorry, not sodium, but calcium bentonite clay. They act in two different ways, but the calcium is helps support the digestive, the intestines, and that kind of thing, and will also not take out any of your electrolytes, actually help support your system while it's detoxifying stuff out of your system as well. So, and interestingly, it also helps to degrade graphene oxide, which has been actually being put in the food and the water supply and saline solutions for the last 10 years. And if you don't know anything about graphene oxide, I would highly encourage you to do a little dig on that through YouTube and Google. You'll find some really interesting information.
Is there, so all of this is definitely out of my zone of understanding. I don't know really much about what you're talking about overall in terms of like, you know, what you're telling me. And I really don't have any argument against it or for it. So I'm quite a neutral party.
Fair enough.
Is there a downside to some of these things, right? Are there things about these things that you're recommending to people that, you know, maybe you shouldn't take these things? What are the limitations of them? What, you know, you're recommending all of these things, but for who are the people that should be kind of looking into these things? Because I'm not going to be one to say, you know, go do what Shannon's telling you to do, because I have no idea what you're talking about. So I would obviously recommend people go research these things before they ever go just try them.
Absolutely. I would agree. And that's a really good point to make, because I don't typically, people go like, well, okay, so you healed yourself from gulf war illness. What did you do? Okay, I can tell you exactly what I did, what I used, but you have to understand everyone is different. What you're taking, what your body is, you know, constitutes, and what you've been exposed to is totally different. Now, those things that I'm referring to that are basic, like detoxifiers on a cellular level, the most that's going to do is going to have an effect on what is it that you're taking as a pharmaceutical, because those things, so, you know, your liver is your detoxifying organ, right? And everything gets processed through the liver. And so, and the reason a lot of people can't lose weight is because their liver is so congested and they have a high sugar diet, high carbohydrate diet in their body. It's just processing sugar all day long. So it can't do anything else as far as the fat goes. It just keeps storing stuff as fat. Plus there's a whole cycle in there, you know, that contributes that as well. And the food itself contributes to that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in there. So yeah, so I'm telling you, these are those products. But if you're taking certain things, you know, you have to be very, definitely do your homework. What are you taking? Are you taking blood pressure? Are you taking blood thinners? Are you taking, you know, statins? Everything that they have a quote unquote pharmaceutical for, you can take something in the natural. If it doesn't do as good or better of a job usually, but you can't just drop one thing and start doing something else if you've been taking it for a while. You have to transition things. And at that time, you know, I was 28. I didn't take anything. I didn't take their Prozac. I didn't take, you know, people are out there, they're on benzos and they've got all these different, you know, medications that they're taking. And so understanding, yeah, you do need to detoxify that safely out of your body. All of these things that I just mentioned do safely detoxify your body. So it's a good thing, but you still need something to, you know, support that system for you while you're shifting, you know, what it is that you're eating to support your overall health. And it's this whole thing, you know, people break up the body into the, you know, nose, ear, and throat, and the eyes and the feet, and, you know, they split it up into different parts, but it's a whole system, you know, and it starts in the brain, it starts with the mental. And, you know, you can take your health into your own hands holistically, but you have to do it smartly. You have to do it wisely. I don't tell people like do a hardcore detox. I don't show people how to do that, like walk through it. There's a lot of people that do a lot of different things out there. They don't really know necessarily the science behind it or what they're doing. So they just kind of follow what other people have tried and have worked for this, that, or the other thing. But, you know, at the end of the day, you have to be responsible for your own health and the choices that you make. You can seek out people like myself that want to help and show you how to do it a holistic way. And I give as much as I can, but I don't want to, I want to make sure that what I'm telling people, anybody can take this product. So I can talk about my CBD, right? And kind of walk into that.
Sure.
To say, the endocannabinoid system was actually discovered. I'm sure it was before that, but it was probably released around 1991, interestingly enough, when I went into the military. And so, it's part of the nervous system. We have the central nervous system, we have a parasympathetic and a sympathetic, which puts us in, one is the fight or flight mode, the other is the rest and digest mode. But you can only be in one or the other at any given time, right? You can't be in both, because when you're in fight or flight mode, it's not time to be creative and, cut an album or, something like that. So, and unlike animals, like they can be, being chased by a cheetah one moment and cheetah's gone and they're back to grazing, in the field and all is good and no big deal. We have the issue of our brain and our eyes, right? So we see, what's going on and we perceive things. And for your body doesn't understand the difference between perceived pain, perceived threat, and actual threat. So, and also on a stress level, if your body's inflamed, you're in pain, you're, overweight, or have any kind of imbalance in your system, your body is in a stress mode, period. It is. And so that means, number one, your digestion is at half capacity. It means that you also cannot really think straight. You can't think properly because your body is trying to just do its functions on a primal level, right? It's just the major organs that it's trying to work. And so when you're putting out cortisol and adrenaline and those, fear and stress hormones, it's cutting off your metabolic rate again by like 60%. So the CBD is truly the cannabinol and the cannabinoids. There's hundreds of them. And, we get into this CBD and THC kind of discussion, and THC has its place for people that have like, mobility issues and that kind of thing, how it responds in the brain. But the CBD is really the healer. And so you need way more CBD than you need THC. So the CBD product that I'm launching into the market is a truly unique product that literally has 0.00% THC. And so companies out there can say that there's 0 THC, but when it comes to labeling laws, typically they're a broad spectrum. So they're not using the entire plant because they aren't, leave out the THC part, but there's always some kind of residual in there. So the 0.3 to 0.5% is acceptable by the FDA to still call it a THC-free product. However, it's not 100% THC free. THC does build up in the fat cells. And so if you use that long enough and a lot of it, because you're in a lot of pain, you could still pop a positive test if that was something, of concern. And so with our product, the reason it's so special is because the plant itself was preserved by the Amish people. And we don't know the formula, but our producer in small batches hand pours it. And so it is literally, truly 0.00% THC free, third-party lab tested, and it's super powerful, super potent. Also because we don't use a tincture. And so when you see those little bottles of tincture, those are by definition, it's a 10 to 20% diluted down, right? So when you have a bottle, let's take olive oil, for example, right? You eat olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
So if you eat olive oil, you want a good oil, right? So you get a bottle of olive oil and let's say, you've got 10 to 20% of it is actually that good, beautiful green olive oil. And then the other 80 to 90% is like a GMO corn or GMO soybean, canola, whatever. But you're still paying $30 for that olive oil, $40, whatever it is. But you're only getting a very little bit of the good stuff. Whereas our bottle is 100% oil. It's one ingredient. It's 100% first cold pressing. There is no second pressing. There is nothing beyond that. It's the first cold pressing. It's the best of the best. And it's 100% oil. So we're giving you everything. And it's got hundreds of cannabinoids that work synergistically together. So when you talk about people, oh, I take a CBD isolate. Okay, well, that's only like one strand. Great. Okay. Well, there's hundreds of strands of CBD and they work together in a synergistic way, which is exactly what they do in the Indian Ayurvedic system. They put a bunch of herbs together that work synergistically together to support that system in your body towards healing. And that's what happens. So there's really just great healing through this product. Our signature product is a salve. It works super fast in like under 10 minutes, like pain's gone. Just, it's gone. We use 2.5 times more CBD than any other manufacturer out there. And it's only 3 ingredients. It's the CBD oil. It's a imported African raw organic shea butter, which is great for, glidability. And it's 100% organic coconut oil, which will bring that CBD down 22 layers deep into the cells of your skin and where it's at. So it works super, super fast.
So when you say 10 minutes, pain is gone, I assume this is this one person's pain? Is this 100 people's pain? Like, give me an understanding of where you get that number.
So yeah, pretty much. I mean, everybody that we tested on, that we give samples to, obviously I go, I'm happy to give you a sample. I just, I want to know your testimonial. And I, try to pick people that have some really big pains, and veterans, of course, are among the most that have some seriously big pains. So, yeah, it's how fast did that work for you? Well, we sample it out at the market. They might walk around, come back 10 minutes later, like, my pain's gone. I had a guy who was working on my car. He had a blown out meniscus from a bar fight in Boston. Who knew that they have bar fights in Boston, right? But he said he's been in pain for 5 years, is on THC like all day, pretty much every day, working on cars, but doesn't always want to be that way. Can't run, can't do anything. Slathered it, on his knee. And within, 5-10 minutes, he was running around the shop. He said he hadn't done that in 5 years, doing cartwheels. I've got another guy, Kevin Simon, who does Gulf War illness side effects. And he has neuropathy. A lot of people have neuropathy, plantar fasciitis. And you put that on your feet. And he walked around Santa's workshop for like 5 hours without any pain. The pain didn't come back until the next morning, when he had to reapply.
But, and so this is it only temporary, or is it something that is, you do it for a long period of time and you start seeing, like, does neuropathy start to go away, or is there, like, what is this? Is this in, a holistic approach to pain medication, or like, what are we talking about here?
Well, when it comes to something like neuropathy, and a lot of pain, really. I mean, we like to sell both together. Obviously, if there's some external pain, it's hard to go throughout your day when you're in pain and to focus on anything besides that pain. Sometimes, you can put it to the back of your mind, but depending on what you're doing, it can come back forward. So when you take it both internally and externally, it's working on a double level. But the thing with CBD is you want to get your cells saturated, and you have trillions and trillions of cells, right? So you're taking it internally and you're using it externally. So, when it comes to neuropathy, that's usually, a symptom of insulin resistance in, you know, one way, shape, or form, not just blood sugar, but insulin resistance. And so, is it going to balance out those things? It does help balance out, blood sugar and insulin levels and those kind of things. So, uh, used over time, you know, could it reverse that? I don't think we've, done those tests, but it certainly helps. And anything that you put CBD with, it enhances the efficacy of that product. So whereas people, like we were talking about before, and you said, well, who should take some of this stuff and who shouldn't take some of this stuff? So when it comes to CBD, keep in mind that, whatever you take it with, it's gonna, if you are taking meds, it's gonna increase the efficacy of those meds. So you want to keep an eye on what you're doing as you're taking it. It's healing you. You may need to cut down on some of your other medications. And it's just something that you have to work out on your own. But it's taking responsibility for your own health. It's not putting your hands, your life in the hands of somebody else that really actually doesn't know any more than you know. All they know is really what they're taught as far as pharmaceuticals go, and what farm helps with this particular symptom and that particular symptom. Because you see, you can go back to the doctor and be like, yeah, I took that farm, it didn't work, didn't do anything for me. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, I took that for a little while. Yeah, it helped initially, but then not so much. So what are they doing? They've got a handful of, products that they can recommend for certain symptoms, but they don't know what the root cause of it is, right? So they're just trying to mask the symptom for you so you can kind of deal with it on a daily basis. But
Can
ultimately, health is about getting to the core of it
can
and
I
and
interrupt
getting
real
that
quick?
balanced out. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that you've been mentioning is healing, and I'm curious, what is your definition of healing in this context?
That's a good question. So healing is it's really a three layers. You can be healed, and you can be cured, and you can be whole. So one is on a physical level, another is on an emotional level, and the last is on a spiritual level. Because everything actually, although people might want to argue with me about it, but from what I found in my experiences, everything ultimately that's physical comes down to something that's mental, emotional, and spiritually related. And there's a root core there that needs to be, um, I guess, what would you say, just uncovered. And so then once you uncover it, then you can kind of know how to deal with it. So that's a good question.
Well, I'm curious, and not to try and bring out any kind of contradiction, but you talk about healing, and it seems as if you're almost mistaking it for curing, or at least that's what I'm kind of gathering in some way when you're talking about the CBD, because in many ways there's people that are on medication right now that are healing because of that pharmaceutical medication, and what you're kind of offering is a different substance that would do something similar. But I'm curious, is it, where, I certainly understand that there's certainly medications that do not work for people,
Mhm.
that are negative on people, but there are medications that are working for people and that are giving these same results that you're talking about in different contexts, obviously in different situations.
Mhm.
And I just want to clarify, that's why I asked the
Yeah,
question of what
that's a
is
good idea.
healing.
Right,
um,
that's a good idea.
and I'm
We should
just
clarify it. And my answer to that would be, there are products out there that they don't actually, if we're talking pharmaceuticals, they don't actually heal per se, um, but they can they can get you to a point, because your body heals itself. You know what I'm saying? So there's nothing. You're just whatever you're introducing it to, so we can kind of liken it to epigenetics. Whatever you're introducing into your body, it's the body that does the healing in and of itself.
Right.
Okay. And so if we say I'm healing, you're always either breaking down or building up. And what is it that, what is it that you're doing? The breaking down, this is a natural cycle of life, right? But what are you building up with? It's your next generation of cells. Okay. So if, we took something like cancer and like, oh, chemotherapy, helped cure me of cancer or heal me of whatever term it is, what are we using? So those are my definitions, right? I think technically we're not allowed to say cure because there's a patent on the word, but does that mean like you're free of that disease per se? So I think when I think of healing, it's an overall, which is what holistic is, right? Holistic is an overall whole body experience in that it is mental, it's emotional, it's physical, and it's spiritual. And it takes all of those things into consideration when it comes to what's going on in the health of your body. So, so I think, the CBD, it works in your body, which has receptors in every single cell. And it has different performances, so to speak, and different things, parts of the body that it balances out. So to me, it's a matter of like you're bringing your body into homeostasis, which is to say you don't need everything that you get can be received from the natural. And even pharmaceuticals, everything came from the natural. It had to start somewhere, right? So they just take it and they alchemize it and, make their own creation, which if you ever read, farms, they've got like 14 side effects to,
Right.
To the benefit. And so all of that is having an effect on the liver. And so even if you're taking a farm and you might say it's healing you or curing you of this or that, it's still having a damaging effect on your liver and possibly some other part of your body in one way, shape, or form. You may just not be aware of it. Where when you're taking this CBD product, all it is doing is supporting every system in your body, bringing it all up another level to get to that spot, that state of homeostasis and back in balance, because that's what your body wants to do.
Certainly. Is there any long-term research on CBD in general? I know it's a pretty new thing, and I know there's drugs out there that certainly don't have the long-term research to really back up or support what they're doing. But I'm curious, what is the long-term research saying about CBD?
Well, it's interesting, actually we say, yeah, it's a pretty new thing, which technically it's not. It's been used for thousands and thousands of years. People just, they might have called it by a different plant in different parts of the world. But it's been used for many, many years, obviously for many different things. So, but as far as since, if we want to talk long term, and they had just kind of brought it out into the light of the medical society in 1991, typically it's you can't overdose on CBD, and certainly CBD with no THC just puts you in a very what should I say? Just a very a calm and good place where you actually feel motivated. You feel motivated, and you have a desire to want to do things. Whereas opposed to some of the other products out there that do have that slight bit of THC, some people are very, very sensitive to that, and they can't. Only 20% of the population can really take a THC product and not feel some anxiety from it. But most people do get some kind of anxiety from THC even could be in small amounts. So, you know, this is just the purest product that we know of, that we've found, that is being produced, that we're offering. It's safe for animals. It's, safe for children. There's no, what's the word? There is a, what do they call, like, a compounding effect. And once you get your cells saturated, it's bringing your body, that peripheral nervous system, into balance. So you're able to deal with everyday stressors better. You're able to, the serotonin and the dopamine effect. It helps people with addiction to get the mind and the balanced, the hormones balanced. And so those would be some of the quote unquote long-term effects, is your body performing the way that it should in this very stressful environment that has become the world that we live in, I would say.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm again, this is all stuff that I have never really dabbled in, never really understood. Not for lack of one, it's just simply lack of it's ignorance. So I'm curious, trying to learn a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, that's great, and that's what's needed. People need to learn, and there's so many things that get them wrapped up in life. It's very easy to let things in your health slide, make this choice or that choice about what it is that you're eating on a daily basis, or what you're drinking, because of the need at the moment. People are tired because of stress. Stress, the first thing that happens with cortisol, is it literally goes in and wipes out your magnesium and your B vitamins. And so, and that's a problem. Like, you have to have magnesium in order for your heart to relax, right? And so in magnesium, and you can't absorb your B vitamins without the magnesium. So they all work, again, synergistically together in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Also important, the form that you take. You can't just go out and take, I mean, you can, but it's not going to necessarily work the way you want it to. So if you get like a magnesium oxide or a magnesium, citrate, is different than, another form. There's forms for the brain and there's forms for the body.
It's interesting you talk about magnesium, because I had a guest a couple episodes ago, episode 28, Chris Shivers. He did he either did or is trying to do a cacao journey, which is basically it's basically chocolate, right? But it's so high in magnesium that it like creates a journey. I think he's actually about to do that, or trying to do that. So I'm really curious where, what that does for him, what he feels that with that. But I mean, it's
the reason that people, they crave magnesium, or they crave chocolate, because they need the magnesium. So if you're like just out of the blue, I mean, sometimes it's sweets, because the fungus and the bugs in your body they eat sweets, they love sugar. But a lot of times it's you need magnesium, because you're just trying to get that calm, and yes, you need that, on a very basic nutritional level. The CBD also helps with those, those things, because it's working on that peripheral nervous system. And there's nothing else that we know of that does. You can do some deep breathing. There's certain breathing exercises that can put you into a parasympathetic, back into a rest digest mode. But if you're constantly in that stress, fight or flight, it's an imbalance. It's a definite imbalance, and the worse it gets, the worse you feel, and things just keep, it just keeps degrading your cells. And based on your nutrition, what are you feeding your next generational cells? Are you feeding them, high glycemic carbs? Are you feeding them, What kind of fats are you feeding them? What kind of proteins are you feeding them? What
Right.
are you building those building blocks with? If it's a plant, you know, plant-based protein, how many pea proteins must you get and other proteins? How much of that can you eat to get one single complete protein bond
Yeah.
for one cell?
Right. It's very interesting.
Just just saying.
Yeah. It's
I'm a
really
I'm a big proponent of a ketovore diet.
sure. It's all very interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, all of that is stuff that is more new to me. Um, it's all incredibly complicated, and I think all the research is still, it's all still out there trying to be figured out. I don't think we have the capacity to really do all the research we need to on the human body to really understand how it all works as a system. And certainly we don't have doctors that focus on the entirety of the system.
Yeah.
I think that's a
There's a lot of noise,
yeah,
you know.
absolutely. Um,
That's that's my biggest thing. There's a lot of noise, and so I go, who are you listening to? Like, really, who are you listening to? What is it that they're saying? And it is a complex system in so many ways, but it can be very simple to to drive to optimal performance per se.
mhm,
Because when you take just very basic, functional kind of nutrition, and you understand, that the cells are, what are the cells made up of, and what do they need to drive optimal performance, which means what? It means the energy that you have. And, so you have the sunlight, you've got your circadian rhythms, you've got your vitamins, your minerals, which I really don't care what kind of diet you try or you're on, that diet is deficient, whether it's carnivore or ketovore or, or plant-based, vegan, vegetarian, it's all deficient in some way, shape, or form of the vitamins and minerals that you need. And so, unfortunately, because people go, I hate taking pills, supplements, blah blah blah. Yeah, you know what? I'm not a huge fan myself. I've been taking them for many years, but I've seen the necessity of certain things that you just can't get. We'll take iodine, for example, which is another, you know, element that is in receptors every single cell in your body. Okay, so where are you getting your iodine from? And is it the right kind of iodine that your body needs in order to turn it into T3 and T4 for your immune system? Um, and do you get enough to fill your trillions and trillions of cells? Probably not. That iodized salt that Morton makes, not the right form. Sorry, it doesn't work. So are you eating lots of seaweed? Probably not. Fish, maybe, but that comes with some mercury depending on what you're eating. So what do you do about iodine? It used to be in the bread a long time ago, back in the 50s, but they replaced it with halides and bromides. And now those halides and bromides, those are also in every receptor cell in your body. So they take up the spot for iodine and you're deficient. And so you get things like, PCOS, um, you know, different kinds of, symptoms come out of iodine deficiency. It has a widespread of health factors. So, you know, and your thyroid, obviously, specifically.
interesting. I,
Yeah.
I've heard iodine more recently, but I had never realized just how, I guess, just how important it is, in the system, and a lot of these things, and it begs a lot of research on my end, but yeah, it's all very interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's a lot of time. You know what I mean? So I've spent 20 years.
yeah,
I've spent 20 years, both, me and my business partner, and she's really more research and development, than I am, just because she geeks out on that stuff. But, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like you, like, that's really, really interesting. Okay, good to know. And, I make those mental notes and I commit it to my memory. But, she's like one of those people that would, puts it all in the files in her head and writes it all down and keeps it forever and a day. And then as you find information, because it all gets replaced, you know what I'm saying? So like back in 1940, you could go to a doctor's office and he was smoking like a Newport, and that was just fine, right?
Yep.
It was good. Smoke them cigarettes, right? And so you get the science, quote unquote, at that time, which was based on, you know, tobacco money, said, hey, smoking's okay for you. Well, I think we all know that it's not. And even then, you know, there wasn't 3,000 to 5,000 chemicals in one single cigarette, but it was still enough to get you hooked on it, right? And the doctor's like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So the science, I would say it depends on who you listen to, because you'll find the answer, whatever it is that you're looking for. If you want to, you know, if you want to hear that your vegan diet is the best diet on the planet and you'll live forever, you'll find people that will tell you that. Is it true? No. You know, I think it was Ophalopithecus or something like that. I forget his exact name, but if you do a study on that, that group of people died off and never came back because all they ate was plants, and they had a number of problems, health problems, that all started with the jaw in the mouth. So there's some interesting research out there, but again, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of time. Most people don't have time to do that, so you know, you rely on other people that do, right? That's what they do.
Interesting. All interesting. Well, Shannon, is there anything else that you you feel you want to share?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. The one last thing I wanted to say, you know, as far as the CBD and the PTSD and the chronic complex PTSD and how it works in the brain, and it changes the way that the brain perceives that kind of pain. So it's very difficult to describe, because PTSD, you know, I've done a lot of thought also and a lot of research, just having, you know, dealt with my own, and you know, through military, just standard military PTSD, you know, trauma events, those kind of things. Whereas complex is something that's dragged out over a long period of time, typically like domestic violence, or one of the things that that I experienced personally was through legal abuse syndrome. And that is actually a term from a psychiatrist or psychologist. I forget what she is, but it's, you know, people that have been that have gone through very contentious divorces, family court. There's children, parental alienation, and those kind of things. And unfortunately, it happens every day, more and more, and people don't know about it until they know about it. And it's a difficult type of PTSD to deal with, in that it's more of it's a grief of a loss, but it wasn't a death in that sense. It's a different kind of death. And so you know, the CBD does help deal with both kinds of PTSD, and helping the brain kind of sort out some of those things. And I believe a lot of it is, you know, it is those stress hormones, it's the water, and basically how that, you know, hits you and affects you at that particular time of this trauma, per se. So it's a subject that, you know, these people that are going through it, it's like, you know, we kind of band together, and it happens with military people that their military PTSD is being used against them in their parenting relationships with their children, and saying like, oh, you know, they're not mentally stable. because they have this post-traumatic stress. Although, they make that out to be like, what some of the Vietnam vet guys went through, which, some of them have very serious, PTSD, combat PTSD, which obviously would be different than just, any regular kind of post-traumatic stress. But just because you have it, many people have it from different things, but it doesn't make you a mentally unstable parent. But you need to be aware that that they do try to use that against you in the family courts in this country. And I'm just here to say, like, if you're in that situation, don't, for me, you feel like you're a veteran, you put yourself out on the line to, for people's freedoms, and you want the same benefit, that you put yourself out on the line for. And then when you get into that situation, there's no, for the most part, there's no real, I'm gonna say respect per se, or even acknowledgement in that sense when it comes to, that they look at us more like, we must be crazy because we went in the military, right? But I say that jokingly in that sense, but it's kind of a little bit true. So just to say, you can deal with that PTSD through the CBD use, it will help. But also just to be aware that you don't know about it until you know about it. It's like when you step in it, that's when you find out. And then how deep you step into it, is a whole nother story. And just to say that, be aware and don't set yourself up to be a target, in that situation, and to be re-abused, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Because when they know that, then they have a preconceived notion or idea about your mental capacity and your mental state, and they're trying to build on that story. So don't let them do that.
It's a remarkably common thing, not only with military, but with domestic violence as well. Which is something where I'm a little bit more in the know on. It's you talking about that certainly reminded me of some of my clients who've dealt with certain things, such as basically having to become diagnosed with PTSD when the reality was both of them had PTSD, but this person was forced to engage with that diagnosis, even though it wasn't nearly as bad as the other person.
Right.
To make this person feel crazy, to make this
Mm-hmm.
person feel like they're the problem.
Yes.
And it's it creates a lot of shame. It creates a lot of guilt. It
Yes.
creates a lot of things that make you not want to speak, not want to talk
Right.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very isolating. It's very destructive. It's very self-destructive, obviously.
Yes.
And it's, you're right. Like, it's something that is remarkably difficult to address. It's difficult to talk about. It's difficult to open up about. It's difficult to know who to go to, because
Yes.
there are therapists out there that, which is one of the reasons I have a job, is that the mental health system in general sometimes looks at you and says, you're the problem, when the
Right.
reality is that it's always two-sided, right? Certainly
Yep.
you have problems, but that does not mean you are the problem. There are
Right.
often deeper stories behind all of this.
Yep.
And that it's not about invalidating the feelings that you have. It's about validating what you feel and understanding where you can change, where you can adapt, where you can grow, where you can heal.
Yep.
And really addressing those things, creating the opportunity to speak on these topics is one of my goals. And
Yep.
opening up about that is incredibly difficult, if you don't know what you're doing.
Yep. And it's so super important.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And I say thank you for going there, with people. And I think honestly, I would wish that there were more people like you as opposed to quote unquote therapists. I don't find, you know, therapists can be helpful to a certain extent. I had to quote unquote go to one myself, and she was wonderful through the VA to not label me with a diagnosis of PTSD. Just that it was what did she call it? Um, situational. Situational trauma is what she referred to, and she was she was very good in that, in that sense, in that she wasn't, and didn't just have you walk through like your trauma every time you went to go see her,
Yeah.
like, so that you're just talking about it, talking about it,
Right.
talking about it, talking about it. To me, that was not helpful. Like, once I was heard, and like, I totally get what you're saying. I might not be something that you experienced yourself, but you're heard, you're validated, just like you said. And so that in and of itself is a step,
Yeah.
right? In healing that emotional trauma. Because something else that's interesting, back around the same time when they were learning about that endocannabinoid system, they also learned that in the heart there are brain-like cells in the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when you experience trauma, you experience that not only in the head, but also in the heart. And so those therapists that are out there, they're trained on just dealing with you on a head basis, right? On a mental level. But the trauma is in your heart, and people don't recognize that and deal with the issues of the heart that are there as well. So in order to be truly healed of that, you've got to hit it from both angles.
And I think you're not wrong. But I think more and more, uh, both therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, all of the mental health system is becoming more aware of that connection.
I hope so.
Certainly the idea of being trauma informed certainly
Yeah,
helps. But I
yeah,
think also there's a big point to be made where just because you understand these things doesn't mean you know how to approach people with them.
right.
And
That's very
that
true.
is that is across the board. That doesn't I don't care if you're a therapist or a coach, right? Or whatever designation you place upon yourself. Um, you can fuck that up,
Yeah,
and people do. And that's one of the hard things about this is that therapy or therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, all of these people have more or less a gatekeeping venture, managing whether they can do certain things. Coaches do not. And in both circumstances, that is dangerous, right? There's risks and
mhm,
rewards for having that gatekeeping system versus risks and rewards of being open to do whatever you want. I've seen people re-traumatized by coaches. I've seen people re-traumatized by therapists and psychologists, psychiatrists. It's
yeah,
people, right? If people
yeah,
don't know how to talk, people don't know how to talk. And that's the hard part about this process is that you have to be able and willing to more or less determine whether this person actually knows how to help you confront your own issues. And that's one of the things that I try and talk about and expose. And does this person that you're seeing, I don't care if you see me or someone else, I just want you to be able to diagnose whether this person knows how to confront you with respect, with honor,
yeah,
with being able to not judge you and not sit there and determine what's right or wrong for you, right? Like this isn't about being a mom or dad, and realistically, that's part of the problem is that you probably had a mom or dad that determined what was right or wrong for you, for a lot of
mhm,
the traumas that I work with. This isn't about right or wrong. This is about understanding what we've been talking about, the mind and the body, and how that system, right, the entire system works together, how you yourself engage with that system, through your thoughts and through your actions, through your habits, perspectives, all of it, and it's really important to be able to have someone walk with you, but not lead the way,
mhm,
right? Like
yeah,
for me, the goal is to always have people lead the way even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's weird, it's like, I don't even know I don't know where the fuck I'm going. That's fine.
Right.
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 Just lead. Right. Because the more you lead, the more you actually empower yourself to dig into these things. Because not everybody's like you. Not everybody wants to express it and then not deal with it,
Right.
or not continue to go through it. Some people do want to continue to go through it for a while and then come back to it, or then put it down, move somewhere else.
Right.
Everybody's different. And that's the important part, is that it's not so much whether you should talk about it or not. It's more about, what do you empower yourself to do? And you will learn through your own empowerment what is right for you. If you talk about it a bunch and you're like, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Cool. What do you want to do? Right. And then you're creating that. I think one of the most important things is that you're creating this sense of, or this desire to do something, to push into something, push into yourself, push into understanding, push into empowerment, whatever. And that's where I think, when we talk about this idea and this concept of healing, that's where I think it really, really comes from, is that ability to reconnect with your ability to actually do something again, especially when we're talking about PTSD, which is so debilitating, of a situation or a circumstance, whatever it is. But
Exactly.
yeah.
So true.
What do you think?
Well, I think you're doing a great job. You've got a great radio voice. It's you could have been a radio man back then, but yeah, and it's important work, and I think that it's something that people tend to want to not deal with, and I think military people in particular, do that because we're trained to, whatever the pain is, to ignore it and move on.
Yeah.
Right. But you can only march that for so long, and it's it's always going to come back around until you deal with it.
Right.
And so like you said, eventually deal with it, and however, reach out for help, because don't isolate yourself.
Yep.
Because that's one of the worst things that you can do, because and you're not alone. You think that you are, but you're not. And that was really enlightening for me. I really didn't know that there were 200 plus other 1,000 vets with Gulf War syndrome until 2017.
Wow.
Or 2018, something like that. So it was literally like 20 years later that I learned that other people had what I had. And I was like, wow, I can help them, to a certain extent, at least give them some very basic building knowledge, what they need to know. And, based on their situation, based on their exposures, based on their diet, based on their environment, and give them, some kind of battle plan per se, if they're up for the mission and they want to feel good and they want to, get back to feeling like themselves again, what they can do to make that happen. And then they just got to start walking it out.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. Well, I have a tradition I forgot to mention. At the end of every show, I ask a question. It's the only scripted question I actually have. So you get the unfortunate job of answering this question without any prior knowledge. I usually try and give it to you, but I forgot. But it's a pretty easy question.
Okay.
If there was one message you could leave the world, what would it be?
Ooh.
And I said it was easy, but that's probably not the case when it's on the spot.
Yeah, right. Wow, the message to leave the world, it would have to be that's tough. I would have to say, if it comes down to, everything as far as my life goes, it would be kind of like the topic of my most recent talks, which is, you know, be warriors and not warriors, because you can't go anywhere in that state. You have to get out of survival mode in order to grow, because nothing grows and nothing good comes out of survival mode.
Yeah.
So get out of that mode and, start walking forward to a different life. Everything is in your mind. So, there's so many cliches, that you can stick in there, but it's really what it is, because that's like number one: get out of survival mode, be a warrior, not a worrier.
Yep.
Take control of what you can control, the controllables, right? And leave everything else up to the creator, to God, if you believe in that, and I hope that you do.
Simple. I like it. Well, Siannon, thank you for joining me. For those of you who are still watching, thank you for paying attention and listening to this to the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do. And we'll catch you next time on the Dylan Experience.
Thank you so much, Don.